What's your favorite scary movie? Alright there guys, and welcome back to another video, and happy Halloween. It's the spookiest day of the year once again, and if you couldn't tell from that intro, today I'm going to be ranking all 6 of the Scream movies from worst to best. That, of course, was my impression of Ghostface at the very beginning. So, there's no such thing as a bad Scream movie, but some, of course, are certainly better than others. Without further ado, let's get straight into it. Coming in at the number 6 spot is Scream 3, released in 2000. Now, every Scream movie has a specific theme, like something that the characters within the movie comment on in relation to the horror genre, with whatever's happening in the horror genre at the time that movie is being made. For Scream 3, the theme of it is how to close out a trilogy, explained by Randy in a video recording he made before his death in Scream 2. So, Scream 3 takes place in a movie studio and the movie production is for Stab 3. Stab is the fictional parody of Scream within Scream. The same way how Scream is sort of a parody of the horror genre as a whole, Stab is a parody of the parody. And first of all, the location to have a Scream movie at a movie studio, that's a great idea. Very, very good location to set a Scream movie. And it mostly follows Ghostface killing all the actors who are playing the characters that we know in Scream, but they're playing the Stab versions of those characters. So Sidney, Dewey, Gale, those lot. And the thing is, those characters aren't really the most interesting compared to the people they're playing. Like Sidney, Dewey, and Gale are obviously way better than the people pretending to be them for Stab 3. And Randy explains in the How to Close Out a Trilogy is that you go back to the beginning to realize something that you've always believed was never true in the first place. And that was the fact that Sidney's mother actually used to work at that very movie studio that they're at. She finds that out after doing some digging and some investigating, which even gives us a nice little Carrie Fisher cameo. But the biggest problem with this movie is Sidney herself. She doesn't really do anything. Apart from the little bit of digging she does and the ending, she spends most of the movie just sitting around in a police station. As the main character of this franchise, she really doesn't get to do much. Dewey and Gale are doing most of the work, which is fine because I like both of them. But Sidney should have been there the whole time as well. And the reveal of who the Ghostface killer is, being Roman, who had spent the whole movie bitching about not getting a good part in Stab 3. And the reveal isn't very good because Roman reveals to Sidney that he's actually her brother. And that Sidney's mom, while working in that movie studio, way before she had Sidney, had Roman first. And Scream 3 had a very messy production. Tons upon tons of rewrites. and even an alternate ending where Roman wanted to engage in some sort of incest fantasy with Sydney. I bet you're glad we didn't actually get that version of the movie. But yeah, that's why Scream 3 comes in at number 6. Coming in at the number 5 spot is Scream 4, released in 2011. Now, Scream 4, of course, coming out over a decade after Scream 3, a little bit had changed in the horror genre. Remakes were all the rage, which is why Scream 4, the theme of Scream 4 is how to do a remake. Essentially trying to do a remake of the original. And Scream 4 gives us the smartest Ghostface there's ever been in Sydney's cousin Jill, because she was the closest Ghostface to ever getting away with her killing spree. And the stab movies that I mentioned, that the people most of the people who get killed in Scream 3 are actors for Stab 3. Since then, we've had Stab 4, 5, 6, and 7 released. So yeah, the Stab movies are more prevalent here, and maybe in Scream 5, but we'll get to that. But they're definitely... Scream 4 is one of the most is where the Stab movies are possibly the most impactful. Because the big climactic endings fight is set at a Stab movie marathon, where a bunch of these college students are going to go to this barn to do a Stab movie marathon where they watch all 7 movies all in a row. And this is the only Scream movie where we don't have Randy or a member of his family explain the theme of this movie. Instead, we have this guy called, I think, what was his name? Charlie, Rory, something like that, who, my god, looks like Macaulay Culkin, but with long hair and older. My god, I thought it was him, but it's not actually him, it's someone else. As much as it looks just like him. Jill only doesn't get away with her killing spree because of something she says right at the end. Because she was in the movie marathon barn along with Gale, and she was the Ghostface that attacks Gale. And when she tells Dewey about it, that her and Gale have matching shoulder stab wounds, and then Dewey goes to Gale's hospital room and tells her the same thing, only for Gale to say, "How did she know I had a shoulder stab wound?" Which is where Dewey says, "Oh crap, she was the killer all along." And of course she gets finished off by Sydney. But Jill does a great job at misdirecting everybody, because of course the Rory Charlie guy, he was the other Ghostface killer in this movie. And whenever he's being Ghostface and not Jill, but Jill's around, she of course pretends to act very, very scared and misdirects everybody. So yeah, the Ghostface of Scream 4 was a lot better than the one from Scream 3, but it just didn't have the same magic as the earlier movies, and that's why it comes in at number 5. Coming in at the number 4 spot is Scream 5, or Scream 2022 if you want to call it that, released of course in 2022, just last year. Just like with Scream 4, Scream 5 had an 11-year gap before it was made from the previous movie. So another decade has passed, and what's the theming of this movie? How to do a requel, because requels nowadays are all the rage. Where it's a remake of the original, but it's also a sequel to the most recent one. So, Scream 5 has brand new characters that have basically become the main characters. We have a sibling pair of Chad and Cindy, who are the niece and nephew of Randy from the first 3 movies. And we have Samantha, who is basically the new main character of the franchise. And we have Tara, played by Jenna Ortega. So you're already off to a good start. Also, the Scream 5 is the only movie in the Scream franchise where the movie doesn't begin with Ghostface killing someone. With the amount of times he stabbed Tara, he probably should have killed her, but he didn't. And that's something unique to only Scream 5. A requel. And of course, Cindy, Randy's nephew, is basically the new Randy. She does the explaining of the theming now. And she explains that in a requel, legacy characters, which would be Sydney, Dewey, and Gale, can now die. They no longer have plot armor. They can get killed as well. Which unfortunately is exactly what happens to our dear old Officer Dewey. He gets killed by Ghostface. And becomes the first legacy character of the series to be killed. Scream 5 is very, very much tries to act like the original. You know, it's set in a high school. We have Samantha is basically the Sydney of this movie, even though Sydney herself is in this movie. But yeah, the 4 characters I mentioned, the new ones, basically become the core 4. That's the nickname they give themselves, which becomes a lot more apparent in Scream 6. So we have Samantha's boyfriend, Richie, who, if you've watched the original, you kind of can see where this is going. He basically is obsessed with the Stab movies. And since Scream 4, we've had a brand new Stab movie released called Stab, like the original, like the very first one. But it's actually Stab 8. So only one Stab movie has been released since Scream 4. And we even get a little cameo from James A. Janice and Chelsea Rebecca from the YouTube channel Dead Meat that host the Kill Count. They even get to make a little cameo talking about how stupid Stab 8 is and how it tried to change so much about the franchise and ruin it. But it's also an in-joke horror reference because Scream 5 is also just called Scream, like the original. But yeah, Richie is very obsessed with these movies, which is probably the way the movie is hinting to you he's one of the killers. They have this character called Wes who gets killed, and that along with his mom, Julie Hicks, who was in Scream 4 as well. She works for the police just like Officer Dewey does. Dewey had become the sheriff in Scream 3, but then she became the sheriff in Scream 4. And then in Scream 5, she's no longer the sheriff, but unfortunately she gets killed right on her own front doorstep by Ghostface. But when Wes gets killed, the end of the movie has a the end of the movie has a well, it goes back to the original. It goes back to Stu Macher's house from the original movie, where there's a big party and like a commemoration of what the character Wes. because it's nice not only because they're doing it for a character in the movie, but it also because it's a perfect way for the producers and everybody involved in the Scream franchise to honor Wes Craven, who of course created this franchise in the 90s. He also created the Elm Street movies in the 80s, so he created two of the biggest horror franchises of all time. Pretty impressive. So, and this was the first Scream movie that released after Wes Craven's passing, which was back in 2015. So yeah, they got to honor the creator of this franchise. Richie reveals himself to be the killer to Samantha, who does take him out. And this girl, Amber, who was part of their friend group, she's the other one. And she gets a pretty horrific death. She gets her face burnt in on a freaking cooker. But yeah, the Scream 5's Ghostface, at least the main one, just so happened to copy the exact formula of the original. It was the boyfriend of the main character. And that's why Scream 5 comes in at number 4. Coming in at number 3 is Scream 6, released this year in 2023. I'm not going to talk too much about it because I made an entire video covering Scream 6 on the channel back in March. So that will be linked in the description for any of you that want to check out my full thoughts on the movie. Scream 6 takes place in New York, so we're finally away from these smaller smaller remote towns, and we're into the big city. New York was actually a really good idea for a location for a Scream movie, and to set it at Halloween because loads of people will have been dressing up as horror movie characters, so it makes it even harder to figure out which one Ghostface is. Especially because multiple people were dressing up as Ghostface. So you never know which one's the real Ghostface and which one is just people dressing up as him. Jason Takes Manhattan gets a little cameo at the beginning. As bad of a movie as that is, of course they'd have to use that since they're in the same place that movie takes place in. So we get nice little cameos in Scream 6 and in Scream 5 from Skeet Ulrich, who of course played Billy Loomis, the boyfriend of Sidney in the first movie. He gets a nice little cameo in the previous movie and in this one. Nice to see him back. Basically, he tries to convince Samantha to become like him because she's actually his daughter. That's how Billy Loomis's legacy still lives on in the Scream franchise, nearly 30 years after his death in the original. And this movie is all about the core four of Chad, Cindy, Samantha, and Tara sticking together because they all now live together in New York. And Cindy explains that this time the theming is we're in a franchise. Obviously, one of the obvious themes of how to end a franchise, of course, whenever they decide to finally finish the Scream franchise, whenever that is, which doesn't look like it's anytime soon at the moment, that of course can be a theme. This movie is the most connected to all of the other ones because every time a Ghostface killing happens, one of the Ghostface masks from an older movie gets left at the crime scene on purposely. This is such a great way of doing it because it connects every single Scream movie together all in one go. And it goes from most recent to least recent. It starts off with the first killing has Ghostface mask from Scream 5, then from Scream 4, then 3, then 2, and then of course the original. One of the best parts of this movie by far is the Ghostface shrine that Gale leads the core 4 to, because it just has so much like memorabilia and just nostalgia from all of the previous Scream movies. The shirt Billy was wearing in the original, the TV that killed Stu Macher, just so many different things. And all of the Ghostface outfits from the previous movies, with of course with of course Billy's from the original being in the center, which of course becomes more important towards the end of the movie, because Samantha actually puts on the Ghostface outfit, specifically her father's Ghostface outfit, to kill the Ghostface killers of this movie, which were the family of Richie, her boyfriend from the previous movie. Just like how Billy Loomis's mother was one of the Ghostface killers in Scream 2. It followed the same theming as Scream 2, just like how Scream 5 followed the same one as the original. Sure, it wasn't the most surprising and great and best Ghostface reveal that it could have been, but it wasn't terrible. It wasn't the worst. Of course, Roman's was the worst. But the way Samantha just goes to town on the mastermind, because Scream 6 was the very first Scream movie to have 3 people involved in the Ghostface killings. Only two of them did the killing, so that stayed the same, but there was a mastermind behind all of it, which never happened before. It was the 2 Ghostface killers were the masterminds usually, but this time we have the killers and a mastermind in Richie's father. So that was interesting, and it makes you wonder, when Scream 7 comes out, because it is going to happen, will there be 3 killers, another 3 people involved in the killings again, a mastermind and 2 killers, or maybe even 3 killers and no mastermind, because they're all the masterminds. So yeah, Scream 6, really damn good. Even if Sydney wasn't in it due to a pay dispute she had with the producers, which is why she wasn't in this movie, as successful as it was, we'd still like to see Sydney return, because she is this franchise. But we'll have to see. And that's why Scream 6 comes in at number 3. Coming in the number 2 spot is Scream 2. Scream 2 has such an amazing location. The college campus is a brilliant location for a Scream movie. And it's probably my favourite location from the series. I know it's not the most iconic. Stu Macher's house from the original is the most iconic, but I just really, really like this one. And Randy, of course, explains Scream 2's theming is how to make a sequel, because that's what this is, of course. Scream 2, of course, was also released in 1997, 1 year after the original. And as I've already just said, one of the Ghostface killers is the mother of Billy Loomis, who was one of the killers in the original. The other killer is Sydney's new boyfriend's good friend. But because of what happened to her in the original, she hasn't got over the trauma of what that did to her. So she initially suspects that her new boyfriend is the Ghostface killer again, but it's not, it's his friend. But Sydney's trauma of the original is what ends up getting her new boyfriend killed by the Ghostface. this movie certainly this movie certainly wanted to change things up a little bit. It made of course making the location of where it takes place bigger. And it killed off the first. It gave us the first time a character that survived the previous movie got killed in the next one, which was Randy himself. He survived the first Scream movie, but was killed in Scream 2. Which is why him explaining how to close a trilogy in Scream 3 was a video recording, because he'd already died in the previous movie. It may have one of the worst scenes in the entire movie, in the whole franchise, when Sidney's boyfriend starts singing in the cafeteria. My god, cringe levels are off the scales in that scene. But I do like the way they reveal the ghost faces, because Mickey, who is the friend of Sidney's boyfriend, he uses Sidney's own trauma of what happened to her with Billy against her to make her judge her new boyfriend and think he's the killer when he has absolutely nothing to do with it, which allows Mickey to then kill Sidney's boyfriend. And the way they showed, they were hinting at Billy's mother being the other Ghostface killer, was done really well, because she had been pestering Gail the entire movie. Like, you'd be wondering, why does she keep coming back? What is the point of her? That was the point of her. She was the other Ghostface killer all along. And that's why Scream 2 comes in at number 2. And coming in the number 1 spot, the greatest Scream movie. Was it ever going to be anything other than the original from 1996? Of course not. It was always going to be Scream 1. Scream 1, of course, introduces us to all the characters, our legacy characters of Gail, Dewey, and Sidney. Introduces us to Billy Loomis, the very first Ghostface killer, and Stu Macher, the other original Ghostface killer. And of course, the theming of the original is the rules of a horror movie, which Randy talks about at the big party at the end of the movie in the third and final act. They're even watching the original Halloween from 1978. Of course, the opening of the original Scream is always known as an iconic scene. It's a very cold opening, where Ghostface has already killed Casey Becker's boyfriend, of course she being played by Drew Barrymore. And then he, of course, kills her. And then strings her up on a tree by her own intestines. But, of course, the originals, the iconic line that I started this video with, was first, of course, said at the very beginning of this movie. What's your favorite scary movie? And the reveal of it was Billy and Stu was a really damn good one. But of course, as I said in talking about Scream 6, when Samantha gets into the Ghostface outfit to kill the killers, Sidney does the exact same thing to Billy and Stu. I mean, what is there to say about the Scream movie the original that no one has said already? It's iconic. It's so well made, and it's so self-aware and meta about everything. It knows what it is and what it wants to do. And that's why Scream from 1996, the original, comes in at number 1. I hope you guys have enjoyed this spooky related list video. If you have, please be sure to leave a like, subscribe if you're new, and until next time, catch you later.